Good morning, or afternoon. Well, I guess it's afternoon, really afternoon if you're from the East Coast, and you West Coasters, I guess it is actually just 1 o'clock in the afternoon tune. Hello everybody, I'm Shelley Palmer. My technical title is Managing Director of the Digital Media Group at Landmark Ventures Shelley Palmer, which is a technology-focused investment bank and strategic advisory. So welcome everybody. Today is kind of a unique day as days go. A couple reasons. One, you're all here, so thank you for coming. But two, and much more importantly, this is the first time we've ever co-located our Media Technology Summit at CTIA. We did it this year for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, mobile is the story. It's no longer a story, it's the story, and this is the epicenter of mobile in the United States. So if you get a chance, there's a whole world of CTIA programming you can see, and certainly a lot of the carriers are here, all the carriers are here, and everybody who's even tangentially involved in the mobile business is here on the premises, and so you're here with 35,000 of your closest friends. But in this room, it's a little bit different. What we've tried to do, look around you, because what you're going to see, the people sitting next to you and around you in this room are the people who are literally the architects of the future of this business. Our goal with Media Technology Summit is always the same. That's to learn a little, teach a little, to meet a lot of people and try and atom smash the smartest people we know in the world together. And from that atom smashing comes great things. And so I'm hoping that if you walked in here a stranger, you will not leave here a stranger. We have many networking events put together for you while you're here. We want to make sure that each of you meet each of you. You've all been hand-chosen to be here. It was very hard to get this ticket. And we made it that way. We tried to make this a very difficult place to get into. Keep the riffraff out, so if you look around you, you'll see almost no riffraff, myself excluded from that. So, without a whole lot of further ado, what I would like to do for a second is set the stage for what Media Technology Summit 2015 is going to be about. And then we're going to jump right into our panel discussions. There is some housekeeping to do, and we will get to it. This conference is set up differently than we normally set up our conferences. There's about 75, 80 minutes of main stage, and then we have breakouts. And these breakouts are curated for each and every one of you. There are different breakout sessions you can go to, and I will explain how that's done. There's a customized itinerary for each and every one of you. You can pick that up at the front desk if you haven't done so already with your registration. After the breakouts, there's going to be, during the breakouts, there's programming for you, but also networking. You'll get a chance to speak to one another, and this is so important. Going to the breakouts really matters. These are not breakout sessions that are throwaways. These are not breakout sessions that we sort of put together to fill space. We've curated the breakouts as carefully, in fact, in every case, more carefully than the main stage. The goal is to have a place where you can have a dialogue. It's very hard when listening in a room like this to the main stage to interact and have questions. It's just too many people. So we're breaking them down in a breakout session. And the goal is for you to go to those breakout sessions and participate heavily. You'll meet people there that you're going to want to talk to. And people do care what you think. So being quiet, bad idea. Do not be quiet. Make yourself loud and visible. And get in touch with what the subject matter really is. And more importantly, inject yourself in the process. This has been an amazing couple of weeks. About 3 weeks ago, maybe closer to 4, the media business lost about $54 billion worth of market cap. And although the stock market has been on a little bit of a roller coaster over the last few weeks, the media stocks got hit particularly hard. And a lot of people had a lot of different reasons why they thought that might be true. I'd like to talk about that for just a second as we sort of gear up for our program today. First and foremost, I've stood on this stage for years, and stages like it for a couple of decades, and I've talked about 3 laws that I deeply, truly believe in: Moore's Law, Metcalfe's Law, and the law of accelerating returns. Everybody here knows Moore's Law. It's overused. It's almost cliche at this point that the density of transistors on silicon double every 18 months. That's from Gordon Moore's very famous paper back in 1965. Of course, it's not true anymore. It's more like every 8 months. Depending on who you ask, it may be as long as 10, but it's probably closer to 8 months. And people have extended Moore's Law to be a catch-all for every kind of technology that might stay the same price but double in power each year. But the reason that the time frame is shorter now is because of the law of accelerating returns, which you can see very nicely outlined in Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Near. That law, that the pace of change is accelerating so quickly that it's accelerating exponentially, that's what we're experiencing right this second. I've been talking about it long enough so that when it actually happened and people were shocked, I was like, but I've been talking about this for decades. And it's happening now. Now, we don't think exponentially. None of us think exponentially. There's an article I wrote a few weeks back, and I'm sure many of you have seen it, where I took a picture. I was out at Jackson Hole, and I happened to be in Yellowstone Park, and there was a lily pond. And I don't see a lot of lily ponds in my world. There was a lily pond, and it was half covered. And so I asked the question in the blog, if it will take 30 days for the lily pond to be completely covered with lily pads, and lily pads are growing exponentially, what day does this photograph depict? And the answer is day 29. For the first 29 days, it doesn't look like anything's happening. And even on the 29th day, only about half the pond is covered, but the next morning, 100% of the pond is covered. Today is the slowest rate of change you will experience ever for the rest of your life. There's just no other way to say it. You're experiencing it right this second. Whatever technological change is happening at this moment, it's slower than anything else will ever happen as long as you live. That's what happened to the media business a couple weeks ago, and there's no other rational way to look at it. We always sit in a room and say, wow, Apple announced this today. That's fantastic. Siri's a little better. The screens are a little better. There's Force Touch. It's a slightly better processor. Oh, look, a bigger iPad. It's thinner. It's prettier. Yeah, that's iteration. But what we're talking about now is innovation. Verizon got on stage this morning, and they talked about 5G. Now, 5G, to be fair, isn't fully specified yet, and it's as much a marketing phrase as it is a technology at this point. But let's pretend for a second that we know what 5G is. And I think we do know 5G is going to be 30 to 50 times faster, according to everyone who talks about it, both up and down, than 4G. Well, that's in a pipeline. That's in a technology pipeline. Verizon's going to put a commercial installation out by 2017. If the first group is going to put 5G out by 2017, by 2020, which is just 5 years from now, inside a 5-year plan, you won't be able to buy a top-of-the-line smart device that isn't 5G. What will that mean? Well, let's put the technologists together. Let's put the software people together. Let's put the hardware people together. And let's play pretend for a minute, just for ourselves, just a little bit of pretend. If I have a camera that has an infrared capability, if I've got lights in my camera that are as bright as the LED lights are now that I can use for flashes, if I've got the capability to go up to the cloud 50 times faster than I can go right now, I can take a picture of an article of food I'm about to eat, I can take my cell phone, and I can hold it on my skin and press a button. And forgetting a galvanic skin response or anything with normal sensors, a bright light and a sensitive enough camera is going to look right into the blood vessels through my skin. What is that going to do when I can get that data up to the cloud? What will happen when Moore's law is in place to the point where the capability is not only there from a processing power standpoint, but from a machine learning standpoint? We'll be training machines from this day forward at an accelerating pace. Human beings who are in customer service centers in every business all over the world that's starting to use machine learning, they're training machines every day. And so we can sort of see this lily pad covering the lily pond metaphor closing in on us. What is the media business going to look like when an average 14-year-old has the capabilities I'm talking about? Well, you're not going to have to wait too long because they're all 11 years old right now. And that's the part of this day that I want everyone to keep in mind. The last part of the law, the last of the three laws that I like the best is Metcalfe's law. And I usually undersell it and I usually undertalk about it, but today it's important. Metcalfe's law says that the value of a network increases proportional to the square of the number of nodes. And basically the way to think about that in non-mathematical terms is networks get more powerful the more people that are in the network. I think it was 2 weeks ago, but I could have been a week and a half, Facebook had the first day with 1 billion logins. I don't know how big 1 billion is, but it sounds like a really big number to me. And I don't think any of you can count to 1 billion while we're sitting here. But I do think that that is an order of magnitude larger than anything anyone ever expected, and we're not done. We're not even close to done. So if a network increases its value proportional to the square of the number of users on the network, that billion mark is really meaningful. First of all, there are only 7+ billion people on the whole planet. There's something like 3 billion people connected to the public internet. So that's either 1/3 of the people with access or 1 in 7 people on the planet. Any way you look at it, that's such a statistically significant number, it can't go without mention. But mentioning it by itself in a vacuum is a factoid. Today and tomorrow, what I'd like you to try and do is contextualize it for your own business. What would it mean if the vast majority of your constituency was not only online, but socially connected? How would the media business change? How would your communication messaging change? And you can't even put that in a question unless you add to it the other side, which is the filtration capability that normal human beings will have. What smartphones do, what all the technology does, is it allows us to filter in a way we've never been able to filter before. The power of this filter set is the sworn enemy or the best friend of every communicator in this room. If you've got to communicate, people love to talk about relevancy and messaging that's relevant and engagement. But at the end of the day, the filters are so good and getting so much better, we really have to think about how we're going to deal with that. So part of this conversation over the next day and a half is going to be about what these filters are capable of, how people are likely to use them, and remember that as much as the machines that we put in place are going to aid us and help us do our jobs better, they're simply going to be the tools that we use for cognitive replacement. To say this in the least polite way possible, if you answered telephones and opened doors for a living, the job description of a receptionist 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you were replaced pretty handily by video cameras with push buttons so you could see who was at the door and open the door, and voicemail. That was pretty much the end of the need for that particular function. You could argue that there was a need for social interaction, for a welcoming committee or someone to welcome an executive or to make someone feel welcome in your office. But that's very different than the cognitive use of somebody's time on a pink message slip to take a phone message, to answer a phone, or to press a button. All of those things can be done using automation and clearly have been in almost every office we've ever attended. You have to take that to its logical conclusion. And so what you also need to keep in mind is that we are in the age of machine learning now. We're in the age of machine learning where we are turning data into action, and that is the subtitle of this conference, Turning Data into Action. If your job is to move a box in Excel, a number from a box in Excel from here to there, machines do that well. If your job is to interpret what those numbers mean in the new column, machines do that well. If your job is to try and figure out a narrative about those numbers, we don't need a narrative. We just need to know that it is. Does this ad perform better than that ad? It's pretty binary. This one is better, that one is better. Is this better against that target or that target? Why? You could ask why all day long, and it might help the creatives create. It might, but it might not. And so at the very least, there's going to be a war between gut marketing and data-driven marketing. At the very least, that war, which has been brewing in foothill skirmishes for 20 years, is now going to become an all-out fight. There are those who are going to tell you that you can never be
creative by machine, and machines can never take the place of people. And you're going to find marketers who say, look, I'm 6.3, and then out 9 significant digits, percentage points ahead of last year's or last quarter or last minute or last report or last sales cycle, and I'm being measured on my numbers. We have to keep this in mind as we go through the next day and a half. And so just a quick recap. We've got real examples of the law of accelerating returns in our face, real examples of exponential change happening right now. We see real examples of machine learning that are working. We know 5G is coming. We know faster processors are coming. We know cloud computing is just getting bigger and better. We also know, and I haven't mentioned it yet, but we will during this day and a half, that security is going to be an issue that every single one of us is going to deal with, from Hillary's emails to Sony being attacked to everything in the middle. If it's online, it can be accessed, and that's just another reality of the world we live in, something to keep in mind as we go through the day. So I want to welcome again each and every one of you, and we are going to spend a lot of time talking about this stuff. You're here because your input is super, super valuable to us. Not only to us at Landmark Ventures, but to each and every participant here. So please, please be vocal, put yourself out there. We really, really want to hear from you, and we want you to get as much out of this conference as possible. I'll also tell you that if you have a suggestion, a question, a comment, there are people from Landmark Ventures all over the place, and the Shelley Palmer team is here too, and the Landmark Shelley Palmer team combined is here. So we will do everything we can to make your stay and your conference as productive as humanly possible. So let's get started. The first